All right. Good afternoon, everyone. We're getting started now. We thank you for your patience. We wanted to give time for a few more folks to join, but this will be recorded, and we're going to make sure that this is posted. And so all of the questions that you all ask we'll try to answer you all live, and we're also going to have an updated frequently asked questions as we traditionally do posted on the website following this call. And so we will get started here right now. If Andrew, if you can start the slideshow. Okay, well, while Andrew gets the slideshow started, I will just kind of get started. My name is Tim White. I am the Director of Equitable Development, and my team manages this Food Access Fund. And so we look forward to this fourth round of seeing your all's applications as we go on with this this Food Access Fund. Andrew, if you can go to the first slide. The purpose of the Food Access Fund is to expand access to resources, food, specifically grocery stores, restaurants, in fast casual restaurants and other food access points in areas that are deemed low food access, with a primary focus on wards 7 and 8. So far, we've issued 23 grants for this project for 21 different establishments, and this grant has gone towards for 21 different businesses. Give me one more. All right. Sorry for that brief break. But yes, the Food Access Fund, the goal was to address equitable access by having food access opportunities in neighborhoods that need it most. On the next slide, we will talk about the timeline. The application itself opened last week on December 12th. Will close at 5 p.m. on January 13th. That is Friday the 13th. Please make sure that you all get your applications in on time. I cannot stress that there are a lot of documents that we're asking you to upload upload to the application. If you submit your application at 4:58, you will miss the deadline. The system will not be able to process fast enough. So please do not wait to the last minute. We will not accept your application if it does not go through the system. We recommend that if you're looking to submit, that you try to submit no later than January 12th to give you plenty of time. That way, if there are any issues, you have enough time to account for it, and you do not miss the deadline of 5 p.m. the day before. If you do it along the way, you can save your draft of your application so you don't have to wait till the last minute to upload everything. And so that also helps with moving the process along with getting your documents submitted on time. So again, just want to stress this deadline. It is probably one of the most important things that we need to underscore. Please ensure that you do not wait till the last minute to submit your documents. We cannot overcome that this is a competitive grant, and so it is not fair to the other folks that take the time and submit some 2 weeks early when you wait till the last minute and you can't get it. And so the phone calls to us asking, we will tell you no, as we've told folks no in the past. And so I want to make sure I stress that to the highest level here. So the review period. How the process works, there's initial screening to make sure the application has all the required documents, signatures, and everything that just to make sure that you pass the eligibility threshold. Then there's an independent review done by a third party that reviews the application and provides scores and recommendations to the DMPED real estate team. At that point, there's a final review done with the real estate team going through and verifying information and doing the final recommendation. The awards that you will be notified, we believe 45 days is the target. You usually do not take the full 45 days to do that, but that is the time frame. You will be notified of whether or not you were awarded or not. On the next slide, we'll talk about the funding priorities. So with the funding priorities, as I mentioned before, the goal of this is to improve access, to improve access to food options for residents in the areas of low access. The goal is to encourage existing operators to expand their operations in a new location. And so with that, the desire is that, I think, click from current slide, Andrew, on the left, the second one over. There you go. And so the goal is to have existing operators that have a proven track record of not only investing in the district, but also investing in some of the communities that we are looking to see have more food options. The goal is to expand our ecosystems with food retailers, and we're doing it through grants, but we're investing in businesses themselves, ideally, because we want to make sure that the money goes to the actual community resource and that we are finding businesses that have an ability to last long term. On the next slide, when we talk about low access areas, we'll define the eligibility areas. That the web address that you see there on the screen, that is also available on the website, either at the Obviously DC website in the funding opportunities section where Food Access Fund is covered, or on the DMPED website where the Food Access Fund page is listed. You can click on that link and enter your address, and it will verify that whether or not your address is one of the Food Access Fund areas. So please make sure that you verify through that link first before you begin your application, because what we want is that the location that you have that you're currently operating, that you currently have a lease on, secured, or an LOI, that you're doing it in a place that you're ineligible. We wouldn't want you to fill out an application and waste your time. But speaking of eligibility, the eligible applicants for the Food Access Fund that we talk about on the next slide, obviously full service grocery stores. That is a huge priority of getting food access, expanding food access, is having fresh food options with the grocery stores. We also have eligible for restaurants we prefer dine-in concepts that allow for sit-down restaurants. New concepts of existing food-related businesses. So a previous grantee that we have is Tropical Smoothie Cafe. They obviously have locations across the region, across the country, and they were the first to open here this fall. They are an existing business that came. However, we have also instances like Little Miss Toya's that will be opening in Penn Branch next year. They are owned by some of the owners that are a part of Creole and 14 and Po' Boy Gyms. And so that owner is opening a new concept called Miss Toya's that will be operating in Penn Branch. But that team, obviously having experience operating restaurants across the city, they show they have that experience, and we look for that experience in there. We're also eligible are taverns, similar to Ivy City Smokehouse, where they're opening Little Ivy City Tavern in Anacostia, where a previous grantee. Neighborhood-based eligible food operators, similar to that, folks that have existing businesses, they have a catering business that has been operating for years and they're looking to expand. Local business enterprise, you can find that definition on the Department of Small and Local Business Development's website. If you are an LBE, you are definitely familiar with that. If you are not an LBE, it is unlikely that you will get your certification in time. However, we welcome you to go to that website to find out what that is. Food halls, obviously, that multiple restaurants being in one place. Property owners, on behalf of their tenant that they have already secured and identified through a lease or a letter of intent. And just to what we define an applicant as, I want to read what's here, but an existing food-related business with at least 2 years of revenue-generating operations and new concept brands of existing food-related operators, like I mentioned a moment ago, which are expanding to a new location in an area that is with low food access. Again, that eligibility area that was defined by that map. On the next slide, we'll go a little bit further into applicants, where we talk about for applicants, we're looking for a commitment that the project will begin within 18 months from receiving the award. The property owner's development team associated with the project must demonstrate a commitment to support the sustaining of a tenant in that location. What that means is we want to know that the district is not the only one investing in this project. So if you're working with a developer, we want to know what tenant improvements the developer is going to fund. And our expectation is if the developer says, you know, this project is going to cost, you know, $1,000 and we're putting $500 in and we're asking the district for $500. Our expectation is that $500 will remain if you all are awarded. The developer is going to hold on to commit to keeping their $500 and the district will commit to keeping ours. And so we do not want any confusion with this because we don't want situations where this award comes in and the property owner changes their tune. That will put your project at risk, and we will not accept it if the developer or property owner says, well, we were going to put in this dollar amount, but now that you have this money, we're not going to honor that commitment. That will put the entire project at risk, and we will reserve the right to pull back the project. The RFA that you can find on the DMPED website walks through in more detail, but these are the high points that we want to make sure that we cover, because it's very important that you all understand that we recognize to do these businesses, it costs a lot of money. It requires a lot of investment. The district is providing a lot of capital to make that investment. The specifics we'll get to a little bit later, but our commitment, we want to make sure we are entering into an agreement with folks that have a similar commitment and won't be wavering in what they have presented us in the grant application. On the next slide, the ineligible applicants. And so I do not need to go through all of these in detail, but what I will point out is that there is the one change that has not been reflected here previously. Is dessert businesses. That was not listed before. What we have found is that that was not a priority for this fund, and we want to make sure that anyone that has a dessert business, if it's an ice cream shop or it's a pie shop, that is not the aim of this grant in expanding healthy food access in neighborhoods. Next slide, the funding uses. Eligible uses, we just speak generally, usually just the build out, but here in detail we go. The build out of a vacant space that includes heavy equipment, fixtures, permanent equipment that is attached to a wall or floor, rent. We put FF&E if you're familiar with projects, and generally the things that fall under there, they may be one-time things associated with large costs associated with your original project. And so if you have a coffee component to it and there's an espresso machine, that's a very expensive espresso machine, while that may not be typically deemed heavy equipment, depending on the size, because some of those machines are very large. that would be an eligible expense on the initial phase of the project. The grant award. I think it's important that everyone understands what is eligible under the grant award. One of the other things that was listed on the last slide was security. That is only an eligible expense for grocery stores. Restaurants, we will not be covering the cost of security. But for grocery stores, we will cover up to $243.17 per square foot. Hold. Please go back to the last slide. Like I said, grocery stores will be up to $243.17 to cover tenant improvements, rent, and security. For restaurants, we will cover up to $303.01 per square foot, and it will cover the tenant improvements and rent. Again, our expectation is that whatever number you all are awarded, if you are able to be awarded, that funding is matched by the commitment that you would put in the grant application. If that number changes or anything that you have represented in your application changes, it puts the entire project, puts the funding that we provided the project at risk. When the money is dispersed, the money is dispersed out in 3 installments. We will not give you all of the money up front. That allows for us to minimize our risk. And it comes in 3 installments. You will get approximately 60% of it up front at the start, what we call the start of construction and execution of your lease. So once you provide us a copy of your executed lease, we will issue a purchase order. Well, the purchase order will be issued. You will be able to submit an invoice, and we will send you a payment for that first tranche. The second tranche you will receive upon receiving your certificate of occupancy, which we deem as the start of operations of your business. And so from the time of you receiving your certificate of occupancy, 30 days after that, you will be eligible to submit an invoice to DMPED, at which point you will be paid the second amount, which would be half of the remaining balance, approximately 20% of the grant, and then the remaining 20% you will be eligible for on the final day of 1 year from your receiving of your certificate of occupancy. Any questions on that, please drop that in the chat. I know that typically is a point of question for everyone. Scoring criteria. This is how the application is broken out in terms of the scoring criteria. You will have a project summary, community impact, market feasibility, financial viability, business experience, job retention, proposed job creation, economic benefits, and then certified business enterprise commitment to equal the 100 points. On the next slide, we'll start with the project summary. Again, I won't go through all the details on here. It's highlighted in detail in the RFA, but for the project summary on the next slide, we are looking for a concise description of your business, where it talks about your operations. It talks about the operations of your business, what the story of how you started. Again, on the next slide, Andrew, the description of what you will require the funds for on the project. That gives us an understanding of your more of a narrative form of a detailed budget that we need you to provide, but giving us background on the project, why you need the funds, what will the money be used on, timeline of the project, obviously showing us where the project will kick off construction no later than 18 months from the signing of the grant agreement, concept plan of your build out. So something that proves that the 1,000 square foot, 2,500 square foot, or whatever size of your establishment shows us how your space is going to be allocated and what that square footage will go to. There are things that are not associated with your restaurant. A good example is that we recently awarded a brewery that is also a restaurant. The brewing elements of their business are not eligible uses of the funds, as you will note in the ineligible things in the grant. Most alcohol related things are not eligible. However, the seating area, the kitchen area, all of the different parts, the hostess space, the serving space, that's all eligible, but you are providing us with a concept plan with the square footage shown on there. It helps us to make sure that we're verifying it. Again, when you get your CFO, though, at the end, that will be verified against your certificate of occupancy. So that is, just want to make sure you all understand that if you all represent something in your grant that is not accurate, there is a point where we will check against that. And if that is incorrect, we will make sure your grant is reduced if you have a smaller footprint than what you explained in your grant. Community impact. This is very critical. We want to make sure this is for the neighborhood. This is for our residents. Part of the reason why we focus on existing operators is because, one, we want to make sure someone has already shown a commitment to the residents of the District of Columbia. And so we want to understand what your commitment looks like and for you to explain that in this application. The community impact, how are you going to activate your area to, as you enter into a community, how are you going to engage with the community? Is there support for your application from the community in the designated area? How are you meeting the priorities of the programs that was outlined earlier, and then contributing to the diversity of healthy food options in the neighborhood compared to what is already there. The next slide, market feasibility. It is critical that we have a good understanding that you will succeed. Restaurants, namely, have a very tough time succeeding in normal circumstances. And so we need to make sure that the resources that we're providing will show that your business are going to be able to survive. We need a concise description of your site, the immediate areas around you. We need to understand how you've done an analysis of how you can focus on this business, and then any changes or modifications in business that will illustrate the growth and how you will change the approach based upon the area that you're going into, including talking about what you're going to sell, what type of food you're going to have there, and what you know about the neighborhood and how it will succeed there. It's very important in this one, in this section. This is the one where there is an assessment that a third-party assessment that is critical that we know that you have looked at what the competition is. If you are a Mexican restaurant and a Chipotle is going to open in the same area where you are, what is the impact that is going to have on you? Do you have a plan for how you can function in an area where you have that level of competition from a franchise-supported establishment? Those are the type of things that we want to make sure we understand. Financial viability. On the next slide, we want to see, at least 2 years of prior operating existing business. If you run one, you should have access to that information. If you have a new brand, this is a new concept, we need 3 years of your experience operating other operations. Just to know, it is important that we need to understand that this is not a new thing. This is not a pet project that you're just jumping into, that you have experience in operating a food business. We want to see the balance sheet. We want to see how that aligns up with your project budget and detail of funds. There's an attachment that gives you a little bit of a template for us to understand what is the funding gap associated with your project. We want to know what your total project budget is and how the grant request that we have fits into it. Additionally, we'd like to see a pro forma that forecasts what your business operations looks like over the next 3 years. Business experience, a list of the major participants and contact information. So we need to know who is your staff, who are the critical people a part of this that make up the experience, and and they're going to be ones running your business and showing how you're going to succeed. The next one, job retention and job creation and the economic benefits. I think the critical thing is we want to know how many jobs, temporary for the construction or other temporary jobs that you may have. How many permanent jobs will you have on there? Direct jobs that will be created or retained. If you have, we completely understand if you're opening up a new restaurant and you're already functioning in another part of the city, you may not want to start with all new employees. So some of your employees may be coming over from that old location because you want to have some seasoned staff to make sure your restaurant gets off or your grocery store gets off in a good way. We completely understand that, but we also want to know the difference of what are the new jobs, what are the jobs that are going to be existing. We also want to have an understanding of what is your hiring plan. How are you planning on making sure that Ward 7 and 8 primarily residents are getting access to the job? Those are the areas where we're looking to hire the most. So even if your location may not necessarily be in Ward 7 and 8, we definitely want to understand how you're helping the city address employment by targeting the areas that we know need more employment the most. We want to also make sure that the wages are aligned and they're living wages. We want to make sure that that obviously the minimum wage with moving to $15 an hour is very significant of getting to that, but what other things are you offering to make sure your employees? Again, this is a competitive application, so that is the reason why we're asking these questions, because we want to know how you all compare to your counterparts that are submitting. CBE is pretty straightforward. We recommend you going and looking up the definition of a certified business enterprise, but we want to know what your plan is when you do your build out and finding certified business enterprises, local DC businesses to help participate in your construction to make sure those dollars are going to district companies as a part of the CBE law. The next one, I will leave that for you all to go in more detail, but this funding has come from the federal program, ARPA, as many people have heard, and the funding that is associated with this. So this is a federal grant. So the compliance that's associated with it, we will have reporting that we will ask of you. You all will need to stay on top of the things we will do. We will do our best, and we provide you with simplified forms on how to submit, but we want to make sure everyone is clear on what type of grant you are applying for. The grant period, we have September 30th, 2025 is the period that, and during that period is our expectation where you would complete your project and we would pay out everything. If there's an instance where your project goes beyond that date, you need to verify, you need to state that in your application, and we will let you know whether or not that is acceptable as a part of the competitive process. Again, you all should go to the RFA and read that in detail, but in general, these are just high-level points associated with the RFP. We reserve the right to make edits to the RFA. We also will not be liable for any costs that you've incurred in doing this application. This is a competitive process. If you do not win because of that, you are applying fully understanding what that is. And then obviously there'll be a pre-award process where we will do visits to verify that everything you have represented is accurate. On the next slide, it goes into the format. I don't need to go into much detail on that. You see the details of 8.5 by 11 format and things like that. And so please go to the Grant Vantage website. If you have questions, there'll be methods for you to reach out to us to ask them, but it is all pretty much there, and I think the key points we've highlighted on this call thus far based upon previous calls. And I believe pretty much our last slide, just reiterating to everyone, I just want to make sure I am stressing this as best as possible. The application opened on December 12th. It will close on January 13th, Friday the 13th at 5 p.m. Please submit your application on time. Do not wait until 5 o'clock or 4:59 to hit submit. There are a lot of documents. You will not be able to get it through in time if you wait until the last minute. The system will not do that. I went through the screening period earlier, how the screening process, and we will notify folks within 45 days of the grant closing who was awarded and work for you all to get your grant documents and everything finalized. And then on the last slide, if you have any questions during this period, the phone number to call is 6365 and let them know you have a question about the Food Access Fund, and they will direct you. The email address you should email if you have questions is dmped.grants@dc.gov. These slides are already on the DMPED website, so all the slides that we had here presented here today, you have access to them. Should you have any questions, these slides have actually been up since the grant application opened on the 12th. Please share that. This recording will also be made available to everyone as well. And if folks have any questions, I still don't see any questions in the chat. So I will assume there are none unless folks raise their hand using the raise hand function. So I will pause for a moment to give folks an opportunity to drop any questions they have in the chat or for them to raise their hand. I am fairly shocked that I don't see any questions, and I'm concerned folks may be having technical difficulties and not asking. Andrew, do you see any hands raised?
No, I don't. We only have one call in that I see, and I see 9 attendees. Is Bueller?
Oh, you know what? They're the folks that are on the phone. *3 to raise your hand. So we'll give you a little bit more time. Yeah, well, there we go. That is what we were missing. Sorry about that, folks. Yes, Andrew has unmuted. Yes, please.
Hi, how are you? So I had a issue joining the physical call today, and I just wanted to make sure, how can I obtain the recording?
The recording will be on the same website where the link for this WebEx was. So we'll post the link to the recording there. Like I said, the slides are already that we presented today are already on there, so you can find them there. But that's where the recording will go.
Okay, great. And then in the case that I can't access the recording, can I just email or call the number on the last page to get it?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for your time today. Perfect. Thank you, gentlemen.
Andrew, if you can go to the next.
Oh.
Yes.
Hey, how you doing?
What's your question, sir? Doing well.
So my question, okay, great. My question was because it seems as though that the funding is mainly for existing businesses that's looking to expand into the Ward 7 and Ward 8 area. But what about businesses? What if you're a new business and you're still taking a risk of opening up in Ward 7, and you're opening up in a food shortage area already. So if you're already taking a risk, and you still may need, because I saw all the different options for the funding for land and for inventory. I mean, not for inventory, but for build out, for stuff like that. But what about those businesses? Because it seems like most of all of the eligibility, all of the eligible businesses were businesses that were already up and running, and then they were just expanding to that area. But I didn't see anything really touching on businesses that were, willing to actually take the risk on that area.
Understood. Yes. So that was intentional. Our desire is to really focus on folks that have experience functioning in the area. And so even if it is a new concept, if you have experience operating a food truck for
Right.
more than the last 3 years, you're ineligible. If you're a
Right.
caterer, you are eligible. So I think the really important thing is
Okay.
this industry is a very tough industry, and the last thing we need in areas where there's already food access is to have a business close. We know that it is an inevitable thing, but we are trying to minimize that risk by making sure we're working with folks with experience. And so, as long as your experience level and you can reflect that in your application matches that 3 years, you would be eligible.
Okay.
But we just
Okay,
the key thing is we don't want someone that has never run a food business ever. This is a lot. This grant is a very high dollar grant. So,
I completely understand. I just wanted that you definitely clarified that, because I just noticed all of the businesses that you guys were mentioning, even though they were examples, they were businesses that were already up and running. But then it was saying that if you have a new concept, you also have to bring in 3 years worth of business experience. So I was just wondering, I just needed the clarity because you can have vast business experience in running a actual establishment, but this may be your first own establishment that you actually own, so it's owner operating, and you are a small business, and you are still taking that risk, opening up in Ward 7 or in Ward 8 or what have you. But you're already getting beat out because you guys are funding businesses that are already existing, and that's just expanding. But what about the small business that's just opening? That's all.
Understood. Thank you, sir. And just also for anyone that does not necessarily have experience, I just want to flag for everyone that we do have. Yes. Hold on one second. I just want to make sure everyone knows there is a program called Nourish DC that is available. If you are just getting started, that program is designed to help folks that don't have experience operating a business, but they work through our partners that are managing that to help folks, give them the technical assistance to what they need in order to help run their business. So that is also another resource that is available, and you can find that at obviouslydc.com, funding opportunities, and look at Nourish DC. And yes, how can I answer your question?
Yes, how's it going? I want to inquire about bringing a franchise. What if you have experience managing different restaurants, and now this will be your first go around trying to own your own? And what is it bringing a franchise? What if there's a franchise that's not necessarily in DC? However, you have an agreement with the franchise holders and to basically buy in and bring one of those franchises here to DC. How does that work?
It will work the same way. I think the only example I can give you is Tropical Smoothie Cafe. Yes, they had franchises in DC already, but we do support franchises if the business is run by someone locally. And so it's just a matter of what your franchise is, what you all sell, you detailing that in your application, and then, again, you would just be competing against the other application, but you would absolutely be eligible.
Okay, perfect. And those have to be included in the application along with all of the other required details about the franchise, right?
Yes. Name of your business, what you plan on selling, the type of food. You want to be as descriptive as possible about what you're operating, because it'll be important for us to know. Again, I gave the example of you're opening a Mexican restaurant. If you're doing that in a development that has other restaurants in it, and there are 3 other Mexican restaurants in there, that will have an impact on your scoring when we talk about market feasibility and understanding how that works.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you for your question. Perfect. No other questions. Well, we thank you for, you hit *3 again to lower your hands as well. I think the folks whose hands are currently raised are folks that have already answered. So if you hit *3 to lower your hand as well. We thank you for your time. Again, this recording will be made available on the website along with the slides that are already there. The questions that you all asked here, we will have frequently asked questions posted as well. If one of the questions that you all asked here is not already a part of the frequently asked questions, we add that to that list, and so that will be made available this week to everyone. But again, if you have any questions at all, do not hesitate and to call that number that is listed here or email. Email is a lot easier. That way you can do it at all times, and we are easily able to track the emails and respond significantly quicker. Someone may not be available at the time of your call, and so email works best. But please call if that is the best way for you to communicate. So that's the reason why I have that option available. So again, thank you all for your time. Andrew, the hands that are still up, are those folks that asked before, or are those new hand raises?
I believe that they're folks that asked. Maybe 13 hasn't asked. Hold on, I'm gonna unmute them for a second.
Yes. I can't see your full number, but it's the 202 number. You had your hand raised. (202-209). Did you have a question?
No, that was I already answered my question. You already answered my question.
Perfect. Okay. Yep. Perfect. Okay. Well, thank you. I think that was the last of the questions then. So we thank you all for your time. Please look out for this recording and the frequently asked questions being added to the website. Please enjoy the rest of your day.